listeners, and welcome to another podcast episode of the Get Smarter podcast, where we spill the reliability for all of our listeners. So today we have a really fun but yet enlightening episode. We're calling it the new OCD, right? Not the disruptive syndrome, but organizational competency development, and how if you develop a roadmap of training programs tailored to an organization's roles and business needs, you can build a foundation for a learning strategy across your organization and help build that culture of reliability that we're all seeking. So prior episodes, we've definitely talked about workforce development. It's often woven into our discussions. We talk about training and offering your people opportunities. And we've talked a lot about the what. But in this episode, we're really going to deep dive into the how. We're going to give you some actionable plans, some good ideas that you can take and build out for your own organization. More and more companies are coming to life cycle engineering and other organizations, realizing that they need to retain and grow their workforce from within. But also, if they want to attract a new workforce, they need to be able to have a plan and opportunities that are going to attract this new workforce. So there are tons of options available. If you Google it, you're going to see you've got public classes, online, certification, all kinds of options, and private classes. We're going to talk a little bit deeply about that today. But in this episode, we're going to talk about an organization-wide approach so that you can plan a training program that's about building competencies and can not only develop your people assets, but can develop individual team performance, which is going to lead to operational performance improvement. I've got with me here today Mr. Ryan Davis. He works here at Lifecycle Engineering as a learning and reliability solutions consultant. Prior to LCE, for 17 years, he was an entrepreneur and an IT solutions consultant. So welcome to the podcast, Ryan. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk with you because you're talking to people all day, every day, in our classes, out there in our industry. And we want to hear about the most demand in topics. You know, what are people looking for in terms of how they're trying to build their programs? What do you see as like the development or the benefits of learning as a team? If there's something that, you know, kind of blocks organizations while they're on this journey, and then how, when everyone's on the same page about the skills and knowledge and how those are necessary for the business, how can that benefit organizations now and in the future? So let's take a step back and talk about why people reach out for a training request. What are organizations struggling with that leads them to do that Google search, to reach out, you know, to a training organization? And what are you kind of seeing there as trends across the industry, Ryan? I know that's a loaded question.
That's a big question for sure. So what I see most is are people trying to standardize processes and procedures. You know, they have, a lot of companies have multiple sites that are all on different levels of the maturity matrix.
Right.
And they want to bring everybody onto to the same level, whether it's, planning and scheduling or RCM, whatever it may be. So that's probably the biggest one. We do get requests from companies who want to give an additional incentive to their employees. So by training them and getting them one of the certifications for from the university partners. So we get a lot of that. We get a lot of people a lot of companies that are that do have higher turnover.
Right.
That's one of the big ones. And we have companies who bring us in for private classes, once a year just to do planning and scheduling training, just because that tends to be one of the higher turnovers.
The positions.
Positions, yeah.
So you mentioned, people from an organization, they want everybody on the same page, or they're trying to ramp up skills or give people opportunities. Are there any problem phrases that people come to you with? I'm just trying to think of, like, if our listeners are out there, and maybe a problem phrase that you could have an example of might resonate with some of our listeners out there.
I would say the biggest one is we are run to fail.
Oh, we are run to fail.
Yes, yes.
So
So
reactive environments.
extremely reactive. They come in and they need help. A lot of them think that, just taking a class or two is going to help with that, and it will help. But they do need, obviously additional help, consulting and services in order to maybe get them to that level for sure.
That's a good question. So do people come to you and like know what they want? They're like, I need planning and scheduling. And but I mean, or do they want a recommendation for you? Or do you like to be like, okay, like how do you work? Somebody comes to you and says, I need planning and scheduling. What's the first thing that you say back to them? You say, okay, or how does that work?
So whenever I jump on a call with them and they say, "Hey, yeah, I need planning and scheduling," I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about. Tell me why you need planning and scheduling."
Right.
Yeah. So then they'll go into their, multiple reasons that I mentioned before, and and at that point, I just kind of dig a little deeper and you find out how many people and that sort of thing, and really
Right.
find out if it's a culture thing, because that does tend to be some of the issue. They're really kind of they're really a lot of companies are pretty pushy about getting the training too, which is really great for us, because they do understand that it's important to train your
It's critical.
train your team.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So then at that point, we will talk about the planning and scheduling, and then we'll talk about the certifications. We'll say, well, look, this also comes along. You're already investing in your team for one class. If you take three more, do you have shutdowns and turnarounds and outages? And they're like, oh yeah, we do. We do it twice a year. Okay. Do you have NMR? Do you have a storeroom that you have? Like, oh yeah, we have 3 or 4 storerooms. Okay. And do you have any managers for your planning? So we just go down and
Right.
they're like, oh yeah, we have all of that. I was like, well, do you usually promote from within your planners and schedulers to a manager? And they are, and almost always they say yes, absolutely. It's like, okay, well then I feel like this certification makes sense, whether it is to be, in a private setting, or even if it's, do a couple classes. Like your maintenance planning and scheduling is a great one to have on site, because it's good for all those people that I just mentioned, but
Right.
but also
Cross-function.
but also operations,
Yeah.
because operations needs to know that the planning and scheduling isn't just a maintenance thing. It's also an operations thing, and how it affects the bottom line in their jobs as well. So, so it's
Right.
very important. So that's one that I always recommend that they do on site, just because I feel like that one is one of the most valuable classes. You get immediate impacts, from that class.
So we talked about a lot of things here. I kind of want to unpack it before we move on. So I think it's important to know, and for our listeners out there who may be considering, training, that it is important to talk to somebody like a Ryan, or, work with a partner that's going to dig a little deeper, because what we have found often is that people think that training is the answer, and it's a piece of the answer, but it may not be the full solution. And we need to dig a little bit deeper about, are we like what's the longer term vision here? What's the shorter, what can we do immediately, but what can we do in the longer term, like for our people to grow the programs, to build our experts in house, to build a career succession path for our people, potentially. You're talking about on site with the planning and scheduling. That could be one site, but it could also be, if you're if you're an enterprise that has multiple sites in a region, or multiple sites that are trying to achieve the same journey, thinking about taking a holistic approach, to that. So work with somebody who is going to ask you the right questions, not just try to sell you a class, but is also going to be like, let's really discuss what your real problems are. And I'm sure training is going to be a part of the solution, but let's look at the big picture, to see where we can go from there and get you the results you want. So I just think that's great. So we talked about planning and scheduling. as being a really popular class, just because it's so appealing to cross functions and it's so critical to get right, to be get out of that reactive mode and try to get into more reliable operations. But what are would you say like other most requested topics or classes that you come across, Ryan?
So, but, that's also a loaded question. So that tends to change. So it's changed each year. Like last year, it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely maintenance planning and scheduling. We did a ton of them. So that was great because I consider honestly planning and scheduling as the first rung on that ladder to reliability excellence.
Yeah.
So if you're not planning, you can't really, if you're not planning properly, you can't do anything else correctly at that point, the way I see it. So but recently we've had a big run on reliability excellence fundamentals. It's one of our redone classes that we've had around a while that has actually been extremely effective. It's really just so that they can get their senior managers into a class for 3 days that really teaches them all about the fundamentals of reliability excellence and how it's going to impact them and how it impacts the bottom line and that sort of thing. So that's been a very, very popular one this year, especially this year.
I love that, getting the leaders and the managers to understand the business sense of reliability, improving maintenance, embracing asset management type culture.
Yeah, and I would say also, oh, I'm sorry, but I would
No, no, no,
also
go ahead.
say risk-based asset management is probably next on this list for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, getting it's about taking an asset from commission, running it through, taking it through its life cycle, using
Mm-hmm.
FMEAs all the way to decommissioning of the asset. And that one's been big. The reliability engineering certification that is part of has really exploded for us. So people find a lot of value in that.
I think that's a good segue to my next question was I want to talk about certifications. And you work with the candidates, you've kind of seen them go through the whole program. What have you observed, or what sort of feedback have you gotten, and what results are you seeing that are coming out of these certification programs?
Well, I would say we have multiple companies that are doing private classes for the reliability engineering certification, which is 4 classes. It's the risk-based asset management, root cause analysis, reliability engineering, excellence, and also predictive maintenance strategies. And then they have a work product at the end. And the reason that they go through this privately is because the work product actually, when completed, actually gives you a number of what you've saved by going through this product. So the work product is you're going to select an asset that's maybe a bad actor. You're going to run a criticality analysis on it. You're going to build a business case for reliability on it. You're going to do an FMEA on it, and then you're going to propose a predictive maintenance strategy. And then by doing that, you're going to quantify how much you've saved. Obviously at the very beginning, you're going to do how much is this costing us now and replacement parts, labor, downtime, whatever it may be. So, and then at the end, they have to put it together into this work product, and then they have to defend it to our subject matter expert, who is our reliability engineering manager. And then we like to have and this is a virtual presentation when you're defending it. So then we'd love to have like management in there just so that they can see what they've done. And with that, the numbers are just astronomical. So these companies are sending 20 people from throughout the company, and they're all having different assets, and just the numbers are in the millions, millions, millions.
Wow.
Yeah, for these companies done. And we have multiple going through it right now. So we have a bunch of them that like to come here to Charleston. So
That gets people's attention, right?
yeah.
If you have a cohort of 10, 15, 20 people all working on improvements where you can actually see the value. Um,
That's 10 to
so
20x savings.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a good ROI. That's a good business
Mhm.
case right there. So we talked about the planners certification and the reliability engineering certification. Are there any other key certifications that are that you see that could help build that foundation across an enterprise, but also lay the ground for those career paths to retain these high potential employees at your site?
Oh, yes, the planning and scheduling certification is another one that's we have. I mean, we have companies doing private classes for all three of our certifications. So the planning and scheduling one is valuable. We have one client right now that he did it he brought us in at their old job, and they found tremendous savings and increased wrench time, that sort of thing. With the planning and scheduling certification, he's at a new company now, and he's brought us in to do it here again. So he sees the value because it's really best practices, based on SMRP, IAM standards. So he sees quite a bit of value in that. We have another company that's going through the maintenance management certification now. They just started, and it's a multiple site company that is trying to get their maintenance managers up to speed because they're all on completely different levels. They have,
Oh, wow.
and they've done it by acquisition too. So they're buying little companies here and there, and they're all on different levels of maturity. So so he's trying to get all the managers trained so that they can understand what they do. And then we're going to move further into into the little more skills based, like root cause and that sort of thing here, later on.
So I love these examples because that's another way that organizations are growing. This happening all the time with mergers and acquisitions, and you're merging different cultures and different experiences together. So to level set everybody on best practices with the maintenance management and other certifications, that's taking that competency and alignment thought together. Are there any other certifications that you could see that would be of value?
Yes, we have a brand new one coming out that we've been working with the university partners on, and it's the Reliability Asset Management Professional certification. So that's formerly known as Reliability Excellence for Managers here. So it's 3 sessions of 3 days. It's for leaders trying to drive reliability within their company. So they're going to
Oh,
have a
wow.
work product that goes along with this as well, because we want learning that's applied. So they're going to do a project within that also to be able to drive that reliability in the company and be able to show value and a bottom line with it.
That's one that I could see getting a lot from coming to a public offering of it and talking to other people also trying to lead reliability and maintenance improvements at their organization, and then working with that subject matter coach facilitator to get them through the certification. So thank you for that. Let's talk about let's talk more about the how. So, Ryan, we've been talking to our audience about the how, today. How do you build a program that's going to build competency in your organization and build alignment across the enterprise? Are there any recommendations that you would give our listeners for those thinking about trying to build a program at their site today?
Yeah, you definitely have to consider your audience when it comes to this, and I would recommend the program approach over the single class, simply because you are going to get best practices in that particular role. But if you can, for that particular task in that role, let's put it that way.
Right.
So if you can expand it to multiple roles so that everybody can understand, I'm sorry, not expand to multiple, expand into multiple classes so that they can understand the other roles and responsibilities that are going on. They can all mesh together and be like, oh, this is why we do this. This is why we do this. This is why
The
we do this.
aha moment.
Yeah, that's right. And then also you want to make sure that you document the results. I mean, every class ends with everybody making an action plan. So when they do when they do complete the class, they know exactly what they're supposed to do at that point. So
Right. I think that's important that all of those points, consider your audience and what do they need to know to do their jobs really well. Um, that I guess I'll just summarize. Training shouldn't be, don't think of it as a one and done, right?
right.
Oh yeah, the seagull approach to training. I'm going to fly over and drop some training on you and then fly away, but really consider it being a program where you can get people together to network internally, understand how they can work together to solve the problems that they are experiencing with these new competencies and what each piece of the reliability puzzle they play. And then results, because how are you going to get more investment, for more programming, unless you can show some real results from these training investments.
Private classes, it's not just learning the materials, it's also about the networking, between sites. Once they realize that they all have similar problems and like that, the networking is invaluable when it comes to that sort of thing. Now you get networking in the public classes, but it's going to be with your peers, usually with other companies.
Right. And
And
industries.
the practical examples we use in the public classes are generic. So in the private classes, we can integrate your own practical examples. We'll have that pre-engagement call beforehand where we'll make sure everybody's aligned, in their objectives, logistics, introduce a facilitator, that sort of thing. And then we'll talk about, what's going on with your company, why you're doing this. And then the facilitator will then integrate your examples into the class to make it more relevant for their team. So there's a big advantage there when it comes to that.
Right. You can see how what you learn could be applied immediately, to the problems that you're experiencing or, the issues. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I know we've talked a lot about in-person, virtual classes, but I want to talk to those bigger organizations or those diverse, geographically dispersed organizations that in person and virtual may not be ideal. I want to talk about those organizations and what are some opportunities there. So Ryan, I know we have some self-paced online learning. Do you want to talk about how organizations are using that in their training plans?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, we have a slew of e-learnings that we use, and you're right, they're very good for to reach geographically dispersed, teams. They're great for onboarding employees faster. They're great for creating a set of standard processes and tools that's all right there together. And they do use learning checks to validate the competency. And you do get access to the resource library that contains the tools, templates, and guides. But we have a lot of companies and countries that use this, including Africa and Asia, Europe,
Uh-huh.
because they have internationally located teams. So it's quite valuable. It is in several languages. It's in German, Japanese, French, and Italian, and English. And then we're working on Spanish right now. So yeah, so
That's great. So I think that is we were talking about building a foundation, and I love how you said there's different languages, but if you use the e-learning, and especially if you do have, a global organization, everybody can speak the same language of reliability, right? So,
yeah.
so you do the broad brush, with the e-learning, get everybody trained on the fundamentals. And then we talked earlier about the specialized roles who can get those certifications. And then we even talked about the new certification that's targeted at leadership. So in thinking about building that competency across the organization, it sounds like there are just a slew of options to build from the shop floor to the top floor in terms of collecting or planning different training options for different levels of the organization to get those competencies where you want them to be, so that people can execute, so that you can get that operational performance you want to see. So I'm seeing a kind of a training matrix, in my head, that has, e-learning and introductory classes. You talked about reliability, excellence, fundamentals, and certifications for some. And so I think it's just really important for our listeners to consider talking to, somebody like you, Ryan, or even going out there and searching for, what is needed, and piecing together a true holistic program. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And it's, we also offer volume discounts as well. So, and or you can purchase them, you can purchase the whole thing. We can give you the SCORM files and you can put it in your own LMS as well. So you can have unlimited users. So absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. So there's lots of flexibility there. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I just wanna thank you for joining me today and talking about not more of the how than the what about workforce development at your site and your organization for your team. And I think our listeners gained a lot, from this episode. A couple takeaways I'll just highlight is that if you're talking about building competency in your team or across your enterprise, you want to take a comprehensive look, make a mix of training programs over time that are based on your audience, based on your roles, and think about how you can progress that program so that the whole organization is going to benefit and you're going to get longer lasting results. We didn't talk about this specifically, but I think it applies that, you want to work with a partner that can be flexible in the different sort of offerings. Training should not be one size fits all. And there should also be an approach that is not only focusing solely on the training, but is also really kind of looking at and digging deep into what are the true problems and issues, and how can we build like a comprehensive solution that's going to work for your specific organization. And that there are different benefits to group training and certifications, and even, private group certifications that include a variety of participants, managers, reliability leaders, planning and scheduling specialists, and reliability engineers. So another thing that I want to mention too, that you just glazed over that we didn't pull out, but was having those leaders involved and supporting the certification candidates, but also the private classes, is getting them out in front of there, and showing their support for these programs. And it sounds like
On that note, you're right. It is important for senior management to be in there.
Yeah.
It's also important for them to kick off these certifications because, 8 times out of 10, a lot of these people don't know why they're in this class and why they're doing this. So it is very important that their senior level leadership actually kick off the meeting and tell them why, and that way, so it's a much easier class to do for sure.
Right. And I mean, and so, listeners out there, we want you to find a partner who's going to help you, structure this and build this and be with you along the way. And it sounds like, Ryan's one of those people. So we are going to have, some episode notes to this episode. Again, Ryan, thank you for being here today. Love to have you back again on the podcast anytime to talk about your insights into our industry and into what our customers are looking for, and how we and other organizations out there can help too. So if you'd
Just with
like,
a quote. Can I
Yeah,
end this?
please.
Sure.
Final thoughts for our audience.
That's right. So the only thing worse than training good employees and losing them is not training your employees and keeping them.
So you heard it here, folks. I think that's an excellent quote.
Yeah, it's by somebody on the internet.
An excellent quote, an excellent ending. Head to our episode notes in lcmarketplace.com. There's actually a lot, or lce.com. There's a lot of information more about what Ryan was talking about. There's even a specific resource page, I think, on Marketplace just about the private classes. So go there and check it out. And just like Ryan's quote said, until next time, listeners, let's stay smarter, people.